Look, a few thoughts as we're starting off on this path. Back in early January 2022, fully 6 weeks before the further invasion, I sat down with a good friend of mine, a senior, who's Alexei Mikheyev, actually, senior Ukrainian diplomat, now ambassador to Berlin. And we looked to identify what we thought were the five biggest Russian lies. And here they are. And for anybody listening in, I wager you have heard at least three of them in the last month. It was NATO expansion that caused Russia to invade Ukraine. The Maidan Revolution of Dignity was an American-backed coup. Ukraine is full of Nazis. Donbass was a civil war, a Ukrainian civil war. And of course, there was genocide of the Russian-speaking minority within Ukraine, right? We'll still hear those, and I still hear them, and we hear them from some big people. So the second thought is, and going back to what Andre said, look, there is a limited amount we can do by fact-checking and rebutting, because unfortunately, the truth is that that a lie has gone several times around the world before the truth gets its trousers on. And the key, and my real education in this began with a trip to Helsinki for a meeting of European countries in Finland's Ministry of Defense in late 2016. And I learned then that probably who are the three leading countries in the world in fighting disinformation and Russian disinformation in particular? Well, certainly then, and I would wager now, it was Finland, it was Sweden, and of course it's Ukraine. Let's not forget about what Ukraine has learned, and two organizations in particular that I came into very close contact with when in Kyiv was Ukraine Crisis Media Center, which was of course set up after Maidan, and also Stop Faking News. So, Ukrainians have a huge amount to teach us, not just about disinformation, about Russia and about how to fight and about freedom and about self-respect and an awful lot of other things. But, I've already said about the limitations of fact-checking and actually rebutting once the lie is out there. I want to pick up on something else that a colleague just said. The autocracies use our freedom against us, and they use freedom of speech against us. So I was actually at a lunch with it was the Swedish ambassador into Kyiv in December 17 it was, and he specifically gathered me and a few other people, Ukrainians, around to have a discussion about how we should counter disinformation. And on the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainians were all for taking down websites, taking down Russian websites. And there was a tension in the room between those from the West who really felt that this was a violation of freedom of speech. Well, I've got to tell you, those in the Kremlin and other autocracies know that only too well, and they use that against us. So actually, I was the Westerner who'd gone native that day, and I said, on the one hand and on the other, but I'm going to come down on balance on the side of my Ukrainian friends, because this is a war. Going back to the fact it's a vibrant war, it's not a cold war, it's actually a hot war. It was then, it is more so now. So yes, I'm absolutely in favor of taking down and destroying the sources of disinformation. But the final thing that I will say, and this is what I have learned, and this is the key, and this is maybe the basis for how we go forward. There are three things. If you really want to fight if you really want to fight disinformation, it is based on resilience of your society. And that resilience has got to be based on critical thinking, so people can actually discriminate between reliable sources and fake sources. And we know, Jonathan, in the UK and the recent experience of the riots and many other examples, that far too many people lack that critical thinking and will take stuff from bad actors and bad sources. And the final point, I've said resilience, I've said critical thinking, and the final point is we've really got to start early. We've got to get this to our policymakers. This has got to, I spoke to people in Finland and Sweden, they start this at 15, 16 years of age in the school in the school program. They're teaching kids critical thinking and how to, because the internet is not going to go away. So we have got to better prepare our citizens as children before they get into adulthood, how to how to how to swim among in the internet world safely, and how to discriminate between good and bad. So that's my final three thoughts to take forward: is resilience, critical thinking, and start early.